People of Bhopal, capital town of Indian state Madhya Pradesh, were sleeping through a cold, intervening night on 2nd and 3rd December 1984. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and the night seemed like any other silent, shivering winter night of the region. But that was only superficial. Somewhere in the eastern part of the city, something nightmarish was happening inside a pesticide plant of the Union Carbide India Limited. An industrial disaster of incomparable magnitude was about to happen. The Union Carbide India Limited plant was established in 1969. 51% was owned by the Union Carbide Corporation and 49% by Indian authorities. The factory used to produce a pesticide which UCIL had branded as 7. A chemical called methyl isocyanate was used for producing this pesticide. Therefore, the factory stored a large amount of MIC inside its premises. On December 2, 1984, it was a routine day at the UCIL factory. MIC was stored in an underground tank. The pipeline washing started at 9:30 p.m. as a routine maintenance operation. Between 10:30 and 11 p.m., workers engaged in the pipeline washing became aware of a leak. However, nothing was done, considering it a normal leak. By 11:30 p.m., workers in the MIC area were feeling the effects of minor exposure to MIC gas and began to look for a leak. One was found by 11:45 p.m. and reported to the MIC supervisor on duty at the time. A decision was made to address the problem after 12:15 a.m. tea break, and in the meantime, employees were instructed to continue looking for leaks. In the 5 minutes after tea break ended at 12:40 a.m., the pressure in the MIC tank rocketed up to 55 psi. Water had begun to leak into the tank E610 containing 42 tons of MIC. The resulting exothermic reaction increased the temperature inside the tank to over 200 degrees Celsius. One worker witnessed a concrete slab above the tank E610 crack. About 12:50 a.m., the emergency relief valve of the tank burst open and large quantities of MIC gas leaked into the atmosphere. The workers at the factory realized the risk of a massive disaster. They tried to activate the safety systems available at the factory at about 12:50 a.m. There were 3 safety systems. First was the vent gas scrubber, which was considered to be the main line of defense. The scrubber was supposed to spray caustic soda on escaping vapors to neutralize the MIC. However, it was not in operational condition. Then, the workers tried turning on the flare tower to burn off the toxic gas. This system was also not in working condition, as a piece of pipeline leading to the tower had been corroded and had not been replaced. The workers then tried transferring the MIC from the tank into a nearby spare tank. The gauge of the spare tank indicated that the tank already contained something. This gauge indicator was found defective later on. After failure in all 3 safety systems, the workers attempted to douse the leaking gas with water spray. The water spray only reached a height of 100 feet from the ground, while the leak was at 120 feet above the ground. At 1 a.m., the workers realized that nothing could be done to stop the leak. Most residents of Bhopal were sleeping when the gas began to leak. Many woke up only because they heard their children coughing or found themselves choking on the fumes. As people jumped up from their beds, they felt their eyes and throat burning. Some choked on their own bile. Others fell to the ground in contortions of pain. As on 3 sides, the UCIL plant was surrounded by slums and other poor settlements, the people living in these colonies were the worst sufferers. There was no warning or guidance to the general public around this time. There were 2 types of alarms in the factory, one mild siren for workers and one loud public siren. The 2 siren systems had been decoupled from one another in 1982 so that it was possible to leave the factory warning sign on while turning off the public one, and this is exactly what was done. The public siren briefly sounded at 12:50 a.m. and was quickly turned off as per company procedure meant to avoid alarming the public around the factory over tiny leaks. The public siren was started only at about 2:30 a.m. Since the gas leaked from a 30-meter chimney, it was not high enough for people to escape the effects. It was not long before the entire city was enveloped by an invisible but extremely toxic gas. People who were cozily lying inside their homes a few minutes ago, they now began to feel suffocation, cough, burning eyes, and vomiting. Streets became crowded with people running here and there for help. The chaos went on throughout the night. Local hospitals were soon overwhelmed with the patients, a crisis further compounded by lack of knowledge of exactly what gas was involved and what its effects were. Within hours, the streets of Bhopal were littered with human corpses and the carcasses of buffaloes, cows, dogs and birds. About 3,000 people died immediately on that night, and another 6,000 died in the next 1 week. Yet another 15 to 20,000 people died over a longer period of time due to the effects of the poisonous gas. Still, about 500,000 people were directly or indirectly affected, with 38,000 temporary partial and roughly 3,900 permanently disabling injuries. Investigations into the tragedy showed that there were many shortcomings at all levels. The UCIL factory used 3 tanks to store 68,000 liters of liquid MIC, and it was to be kept under pressure using inert nitrogen, which helped the pumping of MIC when needed and also kept impurities at bay. The safety regulations specified that a maximum of 50% of the tank should be used for storage, and the MIC was to be stored at 0 degrees Celsius at all times to keep it inert. But the storage tanks at the UCIL were filled over the specified limit of 50%, and moreover the refrigeration system used to maintain the temperature of liquid MIC was not in working condition since January 1982 due to cost-cutting measure. The MIC was kept at 15 to 20 degrees Celsius instead of the recommended 0 degrees Celsius. In the last days of October 1984, the tank E610 lost its ability to maintain the nitrogen pressure, which halted the production of MIC in the plant. The production was soon started again despite a failed attempt of re-establishment of the system. Moreover, the UCIL factory did not have much information about the safe storage of these highly toxic gases. The medical fraternity did not have the requisite know-how to deal with such kind of contamination and at this scale. There was a lack of coordination between the factory and the emergency services. There were also not many trained professionals in that factory. Cost cutting had also had its impact on the safety of the plant, its employees, and the people living around the plant. The plant was also situated in a densely populated area of the city, which went against most known norms. There have been several theories on the reason for the entry of water into the tank. The workers claim that because of the bad maintenance of leaking valves, it was possible for the water to climb from the point where the pipeline washing was performed to the tank E610, while the Union Carbide said that it was not possible and that it was an act of sabotage by a disgruntled worker who introduced the water directly into the tank, although there has never been any proof of this. The most important factors leading to the mega gas leak were plant design, the economic pressure, and the cutting back on, though there were early warning signs of trouble ahead, signs that were ignored. On December 25, 1981, a leak of phosgene killed 1 worker at the plant and severely injured 2 others. On January 9, 1982, 25 workers were hospitalized as a result of another leak at the plant. During a safety week proposed by the management to address worker grievances about the Bhopal facility, repeated incidents of such toxic leakage took place, and workers took the opportunity to complain directly to the American management officials present. The Union Carbide sent a team of US experts to conduct a routine safety audit at the Bhopal plant. The report, which was sent to Union Carbide's US management, stated leaking valves, potential for the release of toxic materials, 61 hazards, 30 of which were major, and the 11 of which were in the MIC or phosgene units. However, nothing was done to address the report's suggestions. Instead, remedial measures were then taken at Union Carbide's identical MIC plant in West Virginia, USA, but not in Bhopal. In August 1982, a chemical engineer suffered 30% burns over his body on coming in contact with liquid MIC. Several leaks occurred between 1982 and 1984, which were largely ignored. In the wake of these incidents, workers at the plant demanded hazardous duty pay scales commensurate with the fact that they were required to handle hazardous substances. All of the requests were denied. As a result, it led to the worst industrial disaster of all time. On December 7, 1984, Warren Anderson, the CEO of Union Carbide, was arrested in Bhopal but later released on bail upon a promise to return. In December 1987, the Central Bureau of Investigation filed a charge sheet against Anderson and other accused. In 2003, the Ministry of External Affairs sent a request to the United States for Anderson's extradition. However, this and further requests were turned down. Warren Anderson never returned to India and lived a comfortable life in the Hamptons until his death in 2014. In January 2010, 7 ex-employees, including the former UCIL chairman, were convicted in Bhopal of causing death by negligence and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment and a fine of about $2,000 each. An 8th former employee was also convicted but died before judgment was passed. A compensation of nearly $470 million was paid by the Union Carbide to the government of India. But legal delays, including identifying the victims, slowed the payout rate to a crawl. The only memorial ever built in Bhopal was privately funded, designed by a daughter of Holocaust victim. In bold letters, the inscription reads, "No Hiroshima, no Bhopal, we want to live." Many years down the road after the Bhopal disaster in 1984, some basic cleanup efforts had taken place, but a lot of contamination is still there. The local people have to live with this environmental pollution every single day. More than 100,000 people are still suffering from the debilitating effects of the gas, which includes respiratory problems, cancer, congenital birth defects, blindness, and many other diseases. Every year since then, scores more are still dying in Bhopal from the various after effects. It has resulted in many children being born with genetic defects, mutations, and mental retardation. It has also had a long-term impact on the reproductive cycle of the affected women and the quality of their breast milk. Besides the effect on people, the impact it has on the environment of that area is also far-reaching. There are still 100 tons of toxic waste alone, which could lead to a continuous poisoning of the soil as well as the groundwater. Some areas in and around the factory are still so polluted that someone entering the area is likely to lose consciousness in less than 10 minutes. In November 1999, international environment watchdog Greenpeace tested soil, groundwater and wells in and around the Union Carbide factory and found 12 volatile organic chemicals and mercury in quantities up to 6 million times higher than expected. While the Bhopal tragedy has certainly received a lot of international attention, not much progress has been achieved to improve people's lives in the area. The tragedy is a burning example of one of the deadliest disasters caused by human negligence in maintenance. I hope I have shed some light on the event and the aftermath of the disaster.